Okay, it's 4:30. Welcome. All council members are present, and we're at the Murray City Municipal Council Committee of the Whole for December 7th, 2021. And again, welcome to all of you who have joined us, and all council members are present. So we'll get started with the approval of the minutes for the MCCD Design Guidelines Walking Tour of October 29th, 2021. Are there any changes or additions from the council? Seeing none, I would appreciate a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, there were none opposed, so we will continue on. Discussion items. The first discussion item is on the completion and receipt of the annual comprehensive financial statement, which is ACFR for short, for fiscal year 2021. Brenda Moore and Robert Wood. Welcome. Great. Thank you, Brenda. And welcome, Robert. Thanks for being here. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Pleasure being with you as council members, with your city management and so forth. It's been a lot of hard work trying to prep this document for you tonight. There's a lot of work that we do, a lot of communication we do with outside parties to verify what they're either holding for you in assets, what you've paid in debt, what your balances are, and so forth, and then confirming that those agree with the city's records. And if not, we do reconciliations and finding out why there might be discrepancies. But really, as part of the audit process, what you're looking for is the independent auditor's report. It's required by state. And then really from us as an independent standpoint, we give an opinion on whether the financials presented herein have any material misstatements and so forth. Happy to report to you on pages 9 through 13 is our independent auditor, actually 9 through 12 is our independent auditor's report. We have given you an unmodified opinion. The opinion is stated right up on the front. We lead out with that in accordance with new standards that have been adopted, but really we feel that the information presented herein for the governmental activities, the business activities, each major fund, the aggregate discretely presented or not discretely presented, aggregate remaining fund information, because certain fund information, like in your proprietaries, don't have to be reported individually, like the golf course, solid waste fund, and telecom. So those are combined into one column up front in the statements. We feel that everything is properly stated. Now, obviously, we can't guarantee that there aren't any misstatements, but we feel we've covered the material basis. Obviously, if we had to audit every single transaction at the city, we'd still be here. But that's why we do stuff in samples and so forth. And we also, discussing at the back of the book, we issue a report on your internal control and on your compliance with laws and regulations. Happy to report that we don't have any issues with the way major processes are being done, such as cash disbursements, cash receipts, payroll, so forth. Even this year, we looked at your credit card transactions to make sure they seem to have proper business support and approvals in going through those, because I know that's been something of concern throughout the state for a couple of years because of other entities' findings on those. On pages 13 through, I believe it's about 25 or 28, the next section, 13 through 28, it's called Management's Discussion and Analysis. Now, this is actually prepared by management, but what I like about this document is the only spot in your financial statements where you will see a side-by-side comparison of what happened in fiscal year 2021 and what happened in fiscal year 2020, obviously in summary information. So maybe I could just point you to page 17 is the balance sheet comparison. Now, this is on the government as a whole. For your governmental activities, which is all your governmental funds, your business type activities is all your enterprise funds. And then you can see the government as a whole. If you look down at your assets, you can see, hey, we've grown significantly in our assets. But one of the themes that we talk about going through this through the financial statements is this year you issued out $36 million in bonds for the NBA and the construction of the new city hall. So that had a lot of impact between the comparison and what's going on, not only from assets, because the city hall's not done, so you're sitting on a bunch of cash, but then you also have a huge liability for those bond payments coming back. So that's a significant portion of the reason why assets and liabilities are up on the statements. And then obviously you can see your total net positions. On page 19, you can see it from an income statement perspective. Maybe looking just down at the bottom, your net increase in net position, which is the third line from the bottom in the table, your governmental activities grew by $17.2 million this year. And in the third column over, your business type activities grew by just over $3 million. So really, in essence, what does all of this mean? More of the stuff that you track is based on a fund basis. You approve budgets based on fund. You track budget versus actuals. You're reviewing reports probably every single month. So it's like, well, how are our funds doing? Let me just go quickly to the fund statements. Brenda, if you take us to page 32. On page 32, more information that you're identified with. You have your general fund, your capital project fund, your redevelopment agency fund, library, the municipal building authority, and then the cemetery. So those are all the governmental funds that the city has incorporated into their operations. One of the things usually that you guys are interested in, if you look at the general fund, they have an unassigned fund balance of $12.5 million. You don't have anything in committed within the general fund, and you don't have anything assigned. So that $12.5 million for state code, the state requires that balance to be 5 to now 35%. It used to be 25%. Now they're going up to 35%. You as a city and council, from my understanding, have adopted, let's keep it closer to 25, because I don't know if that 35% is going to be, is that a temporary item and they're going to knock it back down to 25? We just don't know until the state legislature meets in their sessions and decides what to do. But really, if we were to calculate that against your total revenues on page 36, which is the bottom line revenues up top for $51 million. The stuff down below, other financing sources and uses is not included. I believe you're calculated at just over 24%, 24.2 to 24.8, somewhere in there. That was close. I've got too many reports in my head to try and remember all the numbers. But if we go back to page 32, looking across the bottom, on your total fund balances, each of your funds has a respective positive balance. So which indicates you're in a good position. You're not even close to any deficits. That's what you want to look at and say, are we close to any deficits? If we had some bad emergency repairs and other things that had to be done, do we have enough funds on hand, not only from what you're collecting, but possibly reserves to help pay for programs that you're trying to fund, projects you're trying to fund, such as if you talk to your city engineers, they can spend a lot of money. There's a lot of projects always to do around the city and so forth. But that's why you want to look at your fund balance, say, hey, do we have enough that if we need an emergency situation, we can cover it? Hence the reason for the general fund, minimum of 5, maximum of 35%. So if you look at 36 through 37, again, maybe I just point, this gives you the details on your revenues and expenses. If we look at the bottom though, change in fund balance. So you had a positive increase in each fund balance, some very minimal, like the cemetery fund was only just shy of 17,000. General fund had a net, what we'd say net income of 859,000 and so forth. So all your funds are in a healthy position, which is a good stance. Shows that the city's increasing and trying to be fiscally responsible with the funds that you have. The same can be said with your proprietary funds. I don't think I'll go into those details, but all of your proprietary funds have a positive balance. You have a lot on the horizon. Like this year, I think you capitalized between $8 to $11 million worth of water projects, water wells, water pumps, and other infrastructure. I know you've got a lot of stuff going out here on the roads and around the city. Same with wastewater. I think they're involved in a lot of activities and so forth. part of what increases those funds is when developers are creating their subdivisions. You require them to put in the infrastructure. So they'll put in the roads, the curbs, sidewalks, gutters, the land underneath the roads. Well, we capitalize all that for our governmental activities. Well, they also put in the water, the wastewater, storm drains, and all that type of stuff. When they are done with their subdivision, they deed that over to you. So part of your increase is not because of what you did. It's now you're taking responsibility for an asset and you have the repair responsibility. Questions so far? Am I not going too fast? This is exciting stuff. Are you guys excited out here? Okay. The next section goes over the footnotes to the financial statements. This gives you some clarifications as where are we at with our investments. You're invested in basically two main streams. You have your PTIF with the State Treasurer's Office. You also, note number 4, sorry. I'm just giving some highlights on the notes because they give you a lot more detail than you need, but let's go to page 64, Brenda. So on page 64, this is your investments that the city has. Now, the largest by far is your investment in the State Treasurer's Public Treasurer's Investment Fund, the PTIF, which many organizations are part of. You have $61.8 million there. And then you see the other investments. That's through a company called Morton Asset Management. They manage some investments for you, and they're actually doing a fairly good job. I'm seeing a lot of cities and entities that we audit are involved with them because they usually are able to produce a little bit greater rate than the PTIF. But as we all know, if we were to look at your interest income, rates this past year went way down because your interest, you maybe earned like 20% of what you did in the previous year. So interest rates did take a tank. The rest of the notes go through what's going on in capital assets and also your long-term debt. So you guys were busy this year in issuing out debt, but I'll be excited to see when your new city hall is done, what it looks like. One of the things that I usually like to put out, Brenda, I want to go to note number 17, page 91. Now, as part of your city employees, and you are in your retirement systems with the Utah retirement systems. Now, each of your employees are in a different type system, but there, I want to show you how big an estimation number comes in when you look at your proprietary funds and also the government entity-wide statements. They use what's called the discount factor in valuing the assets and making a determination. They've used a discount factor of 6.95%. We're at 91. You're almost there. Note number 17 is probably like 15 pages long. Right there. Okay. The rate that we're identifying in our financial statements and that we've recorded is $185,000. You have a net pension liability for that. Now, I want to show you if they did change the discount rate by 1 percentage point on the bookend of each of those, so 5.9% or 7.95%, your liability could be as high as $21 million, or your proportionate share of the liability, or you could be sitting on an asset of $25 million. So that shows you within this, there is a lot of estimation that goes on, but I know URS works closely with their actuary company out of Texas, who's qualified for this, and then they also work with the auditors and making sure that that rate is still good, and that's where they want to stay. But rest assured, this is not a liability that you have to pay. You are paying everything in that you need to Utah Retirement Systems. This is just really, we call it a paper entry to say if funding for the plan stopped across the board along every entity and the market were to shut down, your liability would only be right now $185,000 for retirement. So that tells you state of Utah is doing very well in the funding, where you hear maybe other states, they might be 20%, 40%. State of Utah is well over 90% right now. Most of that's thankful. I think the market's done fairly well the last year or two. So these liabilities have continued to come down. Okay. Then you finish off with some budget and actual. Let me just go over the general fund budget before I wrap up here. Looking at the general fund, this is on page 95. So this is your main operating fund for the city, but you also adopt budgets and so forth. If we look down the revenues came in at $6.2 million higher than you anticipated in your final budget adoption. We're noticing this because we do about 13 municipality audits during this time of year, so we're really busy, but we're noticing sales tax revenue is still crazy within the state. 2 years ago, when COVID came out, State Tax Commission said, hey, maybe expect a 10 to 15% reduction. We didn't see that. We ended up seeing a 10% like increase. Well, still over fiscal year 2021 went even higher. Now, I don't know if that's because we just have more people living abroad or whatnot, but we're not hurting in the economy here in Utah like other parts of the nation are, which is great. It allows you to provide more programs and do more services. Bottom line, when you look at expenditures in that one, you had a savings of $6 million in expenditures. So that's your departments being fiscally responsible, and or part of it is supply and demand. Sometimes the supply is not there, so we can't get what we need yet, and so forth. So there's been some delays in certain expenditures because we just can't get a hold of the products, and or services are backlogged, such as the construction of the city hall, which got delayed. It goes through each of the other funds in your budget to actual. I won't take time to cover that other than to say each of your funds, based on what you appropriated, they spent less than the appropriation. So each of your funds is in compliance. So Brenda, let's go to the back tables. I'm going to skip the statistical section that provides some information, a lot of information that bondholders and bond council representatives are very interested in. So this is good for you to have, and you need to have it if you want to get the certificate for excellence in financial reporting, which my understanding was at 41 years. This will be the 41st year. We fully anticipate you're going to get the award again. So your city's done a great job in reporting its financials. The last two reports I mentioned previously, internal controls over financial reporting and on your compliance with laws and regulations. It's really not an opinion, but it's a report stating we didn't find any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies here at the city. The second one, which is on page 139, this is required by the state auditor's office. They put out what is referred to as the state compliance audit guide. Now in this booklet, there's certain sections that we need to audit every single year, such as the top portions, budgetary compliance, fund balance, what's going on in the justice court, restricted taxes, your fraud risk assessment, and government fees. Those are part of the tests that we have to do right now every single year. There's a second section that we go through on a rotation basis. The last two items listed in that table in the middle of the page, enterprise fund transfers, reimbursements, loans and services, and then tax levy revenue recognition are stuff we do on a 3-year rotation basis. Also included, there would be cash management. You have to submit a report to the Division of Finance twice a year on what cash balances you're maintaining. That's done in January and July. We did not audit those this year. I believe we audited that last year. But really, when it comes down to it, on page 40 is our opinion. We feel that Murray City Corporation complied in all material respects with the state compliance requirements referred herein for the year ended June 30th, 2021. So I can't give you any better highlights than this. The reports are all positive. Your fund balances are strong. You guys are doing very well in managing what's going on in the city. Is there any questions that Brenda can answer?
Any questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for meeting the other day and answering questions and going through all of this, and we appreciate your work.
Yes, thank you.
Kat got a full review of the financial statements yesterday. As we met with the budget committee, we went over that in very detail by fund and so forth and answered any questions that were there.
All right, great. Thank you so much, and thank you for being so thorough. And Brenda, you're awesome.
So I do have one final report that I will issue. It's just a template letter. I didn't get time to prepare that today because I was reviewing Bluffdale's financial statement in preparation for their meeting tomorrow. I will send it to Jennifer though, so you can share it with the council. Really, it's just a template letter. There's nothing special about it. It just says we had no disagreements with management and covers some bullet points. The most interesting portion probably for you to look at is I'll attach the journal entries that we had for the audit, which indicates when Brenda gave me the trial balance to start with, what adjustments had to be made to the books or what where did we notice there was errors? If it says PBC, that means she gave me the journal entry. That just for us stands for provided by client. So she noticed an error that she wanted corrected. So I'll give you a copy of the journal entries that we had to make in doing our thorough review of the finance department. But I appreciate the finance department here. Emily and Joanne do a great job in managing the stuff that they do. And you've got a great finance director. They are very detailed oriented. So I appreciate that. It makes my job a little bit easier, even though these guys will say, man, I can't believe he finds this stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for
so
having me.
much. All right. Thanks, Robert. And thanks to all the finance department. Thanks, you guys. We really appreciate your being so detail oriented. Okay. We will continue on. And the next is quarterly power department update. Blaine Hackey. By the way, Blaine, that was a great presentation. My
Thanks.
goodness, I didn't know you could talk for an hour and a half, however long, and be so,
Someone wrote my script. That's how I did it.
you were so compelling. It was really good. No,
I don't know.
It was good. Thank
Sometimes you talk about power issues and people go to sleep.
I will
Anyway.
say the videos helped.
It did.
you. Yeah.
It did.
I would appreciate more videos and
Yeah.
presentations from
We
you
had
moving
4.
forward. Just kidding.
No, we did have to let everybody know, we had our IPA annual meeting up in Little America today. And many of you came. I really appreciate you going, taking the time to come up there and learn about IPA, the Intermountain Power Agency. Afterwards, we had our board meeting, and to resolve this point, we critiqued the night, and we had a banquet last night and today. And that was one of the things that was mentioned was videos helped.
Yes.
Because it brought people in and back and forth. It was a lot more work for staff, but I think those videos can go back and we can use those again for new council members or
It was
even new
really good.
employees.
Yeah.
Some
I
of
think
the
it was
topics.
sorry, I want to interject really quick. I think it was a great tool to have for some of the things that IPA needs moving forward. It definitely,
We talked about the past, we talked
Yeah,
about the future,
it
and
was
we
great.
talked about the present. We talked about green hydrogen. We did a tribute
Yes.
to the former not general manager, but the board of directors. So anyway, thank you for coming. I hope you learned something. And if you have a lot of questions, hopefully maybe even today, we'll have some time to answer some of those questions. Because IPA is one of the issues I wanted to talk about. Unless you had anything particular to talk about, Council, I wanted to just give an update of what's happening with the power department. First of all, we're fully staffed. We do have one opening right now. We've had a couple linemen leave, but for the most part, we're fully staffed and have not seen a lot of back and forth with people. We have no COVID issues right now. We've had a safe, our safety record has been good, but let's get into the nuts and bolts of things I'm excited about. And that's where we buy our power from. Some of this might be review to some of you, but let me go over some of the places where we buy power from. And each of those projects where we have a plant have different issues. Sometimes they're environmental, sometimes they're political, sometimes they're staffing. Sometimes it's just ornery people trying to get an agreement with a landowner or something like that. But let's review a little bit about where the resources we buy from is the Colorado River Storage Project, which is on the Colorado River, the Hunter Power Plant out by Price, Utah, coal-fired, the San Juan coal-fired plant down in the Four Corners area, and I'll talk about each of these individually in a second. We have ownership or entitlement to 2 landfill methane plants here in the valley. One's at the Transjordan landfill and one is at the Salt Lake County landfill. We have our own gas turbines on 4800 South. We have our small hydro up by Little Cottonwood Canyon. We have access to the IPA callback, which is the coal plant in Delta. When I say callback, meaning we have rights to that plant, but we don't have to take it if the market dictates it's inexpensive power. And I'll detail that in a second. We also have access to the UAMPS pool. The UAMPS pool is that group of 48 cities and UAMPS that buy and sell power individually as power cities, but also when they have surplus or deficit, they can rely on the pool, rely on the other UAMPS members to buy and sell power from. And we can make those deals online. We can make phone calls to people. We can call Parowan or Blanding or Logan and say, hey, we're short hour ending 18, 19, and 20. What do you have out there? And then we can price it and we can, work back and forth. That's what the pool does. And then we can also do deals by signature with cities. And we've done that in the past. We've sold to Springville. We've sold to Kaysville. We've bought from Logan. And that's actually with the signature, not really a click online type of market, but an actual signature back and forth. And then the last resource that we will rely on is the Red Mesa, which is the solar plant down in the Four Corners area. And so those are where we buy our power from. Once again, each project has its own issues, but let's talk about issues. Let's talk about Colorado River Storage Project. As you know, Lake Powell is losing water, and we're getting very close to being pretty scary as far as being able to generate down there at Glen Canyon Dam. As a result, the federal government, because of the lowering elevation in the reservoir, has put on some stopgap methods to slow down the process or to lessen the generation of coming out of the dam. As a result, starting December 1st, which was this week, we're receiving less kilowatt hours out of the dam than was contracted to us. We're receiving about 40% less than what we had originally had thought and was contracted. And that is basically to save the water for summer or save the water for us to drink. So the lessened kilowatt hours makes us go out on the market and to these other resources that I've told you about, and to either try to buy more power from that area or buy more natural gas so we can make more from our turbines on 48 South. But it's not a dire issue. We can find generation out there, but just know that we're not getting as much federal hydro as we have in the past. Now, this is hopefully a 2-year situation. The federal government, like I said, who runs the plant, are giving us 40% less kilowatt hours, but they've jacked the price up 14% on what we get. So we're paying more for getting less kilowatt hours. Now, the result on our budget will be about $600,000 to $750,000 more that we'll have to pay for the 60% of the energy. The other 40% we'll have to find somewhere else. So that impact of $600,000 on the power department budget is workable. We have margins in reserves where we can easily draw back on that, or we can cut costs in some other way. We're not looking at a rate increase by any stretch of the imagination. This is one of those bumps in the road, we hope. And when we get water, like Thursday when it's supposed to snow during both commutes this week, hopefully we'll be able to stockpile some of that up there, and we'll see how far that goes. But we need a lot more snow than that for sure. But
Blaine, really quick.
Sure.
Sorry. Can I ask a question? How many services do we use in our portfolio? Is it 12 or 13? The total.
How many did I mention?
I don't know. You mentioned them and I lost
I've
track.
got about
after
10 here.
Okay.
So 10-ish.
So we have 10 that we can kind of.
We can draw from.
Okay.
Yeah. And, some of those are more expensive than others. We try to play the market on most of it. We don't like to make a deal for more money than we thought. But and we are always looking at other resources. And I'll explain one resource in the end if I have time that we're looking at down in the San Juan power plant that's going to be mothballed in the spring. There are some investors down there that are trying to keep that plant going by using some technology, and we'll get into that in a second. So we might be able to keep that one on a little bit longer. So because we're short the kilowatt hours coming out of the CRSP project, we've gone ahead and we've committed that we're going to run our gas turbines more this summer. This past summer, we ran turbines June, July, August into September, about 16 to 18 hours a day. Usually we'll start them up at 10 in the morning and go till around midnight. Is that 16, 14? Well, thereabouts, 9 in the morning until midnight. And then our load drops off and we don't need to run the gas turbines. And so this past year, we ran 9 million kilowatt hours through the 3 turbines. This year, now, remember I mentioned we're going to be short 50 million kilowatt hours coming out of the Glen Canyon Dam. And we generated 9 million with our turbines. We're going to have to make up the difference somehow. Now, our turbines aren't going to be the answer for all, but we're going to run our turbines a lot more. We expect that they will be run about 2 to 3 times more this coming summer than we did last summer. Means we might run on weekends. We've got to make up that difference somehow from the federal hydro. And to do that, we've gone ahead and ordered some natural gas ahead of time. Lots of times we'll run the natural gas just based on the market, whatever the market price is for that day. And we've really never been burned in the years I've done it. But this year we decided, because we are committing to gas turbines and we know that that's going to be one of our cheaper resources, we've gone ahead and ordered 300,000 decatherms of gas, and at about $4. $4, so that's what, 1.2 million? So let's round it to, we've ordered $1 million worth of gas for next summer that we will commit to run our turbines. And that'll be a partial way that we'll make up for the difference in the loss of energy from Lake Powell. We're also talking to other members of UAMPS and seeing what they might have out there. We're kind of all in the same market right now. The market prices this past summer for energy was extraordinarily high. A lot of the coal plants have been shut down, and because of the supply and demand, energy in July and August is really at a premium. We paid close to $300 $300 a megawatt hour for some hours last summer. Usually it's around 30 or 40, and we paid close to 300 on some hours. And that's not dire, because you don't want to buy a resource where you cover your load 24 hours a day. You have to buy spikes of power from 4 in the afternoon to 8. Sometimes it costs a little more, but so we're ordering gas. Another thing we're looking at to fill the difference, to fill the void, is we're looking at the IPP project, where we can call back power from California. And we do that through a commitment that I will have the mayor sign here in about 2 weeks. Our commitment is mid-December, where we commit to what are we going to do next summer. Between April and September, we will have the access to energy from that coal-fired plant if we want it. And we will check the pricing versus what we think is going to go out there. And then I will go to Mayor Camp and say, Mayor, we want to call back 10,000 kilowatts or whatever that number will be. And that'll be one way we can fill the void of what we're missing from the Lake Powell issue. So right now we don't know what that number is, because there are some constraints on the IPP plant that gets really complicated. And you probably sense that a little bit today, how complex the IPP plant is, or IPA plant is. So with that, let me go into the IPA group a little bit. Any questions on CRSP before I move on? I'm going to talk about IPA now. Okay. So the IPA group, it's owned by 23 cities in Utah. We are partners with LA, Burbank, Glendale, Riverside, Anaheim, and one other, Glendale. And there are some co-ops as well, Dixie, Garcane. Anyway, we have entitlement into this coal-fired plant. Right now, the plant is having issues with the coal supply. And the coal is being mined, but the coal right now is not being able to be transported down the canyon because of Union Pacific issues. Trains are not running as contracted to the IPP plant. There's a lot of reasons why, and a lot of fingers being pointed, but of 25 trains a month that we order, we're getting about 9 or 10 of coal delivered to the plant out in Delta, Utah. And so our coal pile is dwindling. It's dwindling to the point where we can't run that plant full load. Los Angeles, who wants the power, is constraining their generation of that plant because they want to save some of the coal pile for July and August, when they really need it. We really need the power as well as they do in July and August. So because of that constraint, because they have artificially put the plant at 50% and not been able to run it at 100%, that makes a big difference to what we're going to do on callback. If I wanted to call back, I know these numbers might be foreign, but 10 megawatts, and the plant's only running at 50% because they don't have enough coal, I only get 5 megawatts, even though I ordered 10. Well, with the 10 megawatts comes a minimum amount you have to pay, but you might only get 5 megawatts of energy. So we're going to have to weigh that number as it gets closer to next week. And I'll keep Mayor Camp on the hotline. Whether you answer your phone. We will make that call and decide whether that's a good option to take. And, there'll be a push point there. I've got several cities in the UAMPS group that actually have called and want us to call back power for them because they don't have access to IPP or ownership in it. And we've done that in the past where we have called back energy for other cities, marked it up a little bit, made a little bit of money, and then sold it to them. Now they've shown some interest in me doing that too, but we're going to crunch the numbers because of the constraints of the coal. That really puts a big question mark on whether IPA is a good plan. Now this is temporary. If we start getting trains coming down the canyon, we'll be fine and dandy. But we've never had this issue before in the 33 years of IPA where we got coal at the coal mine mouth, but we can't get it down the canyon. We've had issues with coal getting to the mouth of the canyon with labor issues or bad coal, whatever the case may be. We've never had Union Pacific being a big issue to us. So there's a lot of finger pointing, but a lot of people are saying that the coal is going across the seas to China. And instead of going down out of Spanish Fork Canyon, instead of turning left to Delta, it's turning right and going to Oakland because they can sell the coal for 3 or 4 times the cost of what they can sell it to Delta. So a lot of issues there. It's really interesting. It makes it real complicated. As you learned today, some of you that are up there, we're in the process of changing that fuel from coal to a natural gas plant with a 30% hydrogen mix in that natural gas. We're working towards a late or a mid-2025 operation of that plant when the turbines will run. I guess they're called turbines. I don't know. Gas and hydrogen mixed together. I think they're turbines. Do you know, Brett? So we're in the process of going to bonding on that, and you've learned about that today. I've been involved a lot as the board of director chair in $500 million worth of bonds that IPA is going to ask for this coming spring. There were 7 banks interested in lending the $500 million. 6 of them are up there today at the meeting, shaking hands and kissing babies and doing whatever they did. They were trying to get. It was kind of interesting to see people we hadn't seen in years from IPA suddenly show up. We want to lend you money. That's the way it was. There's a new general manager at IPA, as you know. Dan Eldridge is retired, and Cameron Cowan is the new one. I work closely with Cameron. He's very competent, and he'll do fine. Let me talk a little bit about the IPA issue. The focus of IPA right now is to get around the surprise legislation that came on us this past special session a couple of weeks ago. SB 2002, which was passed in the special session, I can't say a word, and was signed into law by Governor Cox. That caught IPA by surprise. In a nutshell, there are reasons why IPA came on the focus and on the target for that. Part of it is Millard County commissioners had some issues with the plant, and that the communication wasn't as good as they thought. They thought that maybe California and the IPA group was maybe bullying them a little bit. Maybe so. We've tried to increase our communication with them, let them know what's happening out there. One of the reasons that they might have some issues with IPA is that there's a tax issue. IPA pays taxes to the tune of millions and millions of dollars, even though they theoretically don't have to pay taxes because they're a not-for-profit organization type of thing. And Millard County's valuation of that plant and our valuation from IPA's perspective are about $500 million off. So that's in the courts right now is what is the real value of the plant. And other issues, some legislators have some issues that we actually took some non-Utah coal and burned it through. And this is a 30-year-old plant. There were a couple of years when we had to go get some coal from Wyoming because of labor issues, or because we just had some really bad coal in Utah and we went to Wyoming to get it. Well, there was a gentleman's agreement back in the late 70s, early 80s, where we would only use Utah coal, and nothing really contractually. But anyway, these things are compiling, and finally, I think push came to shove. The straw that broke the camel's back was in Miller County, and so they got some sponsorship on this legislation, SB 2002, which basically took away a few of IPA's rights that they had been given over the 30 years of the project. One of them was no longer could IPA do eminent domain on issues, and that has never been exercised in the 30 years we've had it. So, but we are starting to build gas pipelines and other utility things into the plant because of this new project. We don't know if that's going to really affect us or not. One thing that we are pretty concerned about is that it opens the IPA up to a legislative auditor, which is different than the state auditor, I'm told. The state auditor is John Dougal, and he comes in. Brendan, do you know him? Oh, he may come. But legislative auditor is different than the state auditor, and it may open up some of the books that we have nothing to hide at IPA, but there's just some innuendo and some issues that might come down the pike that we're a little bit worried about. So after the meeting today, we've talked, and you well know, we're trying to do a better communication with the people in Delta and Miller County, and we feel that that's going to be a better way to get around this. They do think California is the big bully, and they think that California is just imposing their will on Utah, and we're trying to do that. So today in your packet, you got these issues and answers, these cards, and those of you who weren't there, I've got some extras. But these cards are designed so that I can present them to my mayor and my city council if they have questions about what IPA is happening. What's happening, with the hydrogen? What's happening with the tax issue and the coal issue? And each of these have flashcards, I guess you could say, on what's the latest and greatest on IPP and IPA. We've given these to all the IPA city reps, and our hope is that they will go to their mayor and city council as well and let you know what's happening out there, so that the next time we get some legislation up on the hill, we're ready to battle it. This last battle caught us totally off guard. We had one day to prepare for it, and then they shoved it through this special session, and we had, as I heard today, as I mentioned, we had 3 total minutes. IPA did 3 minutes to rebut or to say yay or nay. And it just, they wouldn't give us any more time. It was slam dunked and went through. It was frustrating because we didn't have our day in court, our day in the sun. So we're trying to avoid that by getting the word out to the councils and mayors that IPA is a value to every Utah city. It's a value to Murray, even though we haven't called it back since 2014. We haven't received any energy from IPA. But there's still a value there because, hey, we might call it back this summer, and it might save us $1 million by not going somewhere else. That's the value of IPA. It's always there, and with a little bit of notice, we can call it back. So I will continually hound you, and maybe hound is not a good word, but if you have access to the legislators that represent Murray, let them know that we support IPA, and we want legislation that will help IPA. In this last go around, when SB 2002 was close to a vote, I contacted 6 Murray legislators, 2 senators and 4 reps. As you know, Murray City is slivered into all different kinds of districts, with Spackman Moss taking a little bit here and there. And of the 6, I had 4 responses, 2 non-responses, but I had 4 people that voted in support of IPA. And I really appreciated that. Our attempt this past time was not so much against the legislation, but give us time to debate. Let's go to a general session rather than shove it through a special session.
That was so offensive that they
and
didn't
that-
even give you a heads
Yeah,
up or
no
any
heads.
kind of respect. I just,
Yeah.
that was really wrong.
So I really appreciated the Murray people that responded back to me and said, hey, yeah, we'll try to delay it. And we lost, but that's okay. We'll move on. All right. How we doing, Diane, on time? Okay. Okay, I'm through with the IPA unless you have some questions. Any questions on what happened today? It's a long day for you. It's exciting for me because I talk about these issues all the time, but
It was really good. I found
thanks.
it really informative. And I'm really glad Jennifer was able to make it because, this is new to her. And I think you did a great job in explaining, a lot of the things that are complicated and, difficult for all of us. So it was.
Well, I
really
think
good.
everybody else up in that room is the same boat as you. They're council members and mayors that get bits and pieces of jargon and get some and acronyms. And one of these cards actually does have a
Those acronyms
definition.
drive me crazy.
IPP, IPSC, LADWP, IPA, blah, 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 blah. And one of the cards actually helps you define that. So
I think
Appreciate
what's interesting about that plant is because California is tied to it, a lot of the stuff that's even in the media is led by California, where we're free. I can see why Millard is a little upset, but at the same time, knowing, it can really hurt Murray.
yeah,
Long
and I
run.
think that's what we finally came to realize
Yeah.
well before today, but we've got to get the Utah word out there. This is a Utah plant owned by Utah. It's not owned by LA. It's owned by Utah. And if
And I think
LA
that was important in the history of the video and talking about that and how Utah played a big role
Yeah.
in that plant.
And when that was built in the late 70s, early 80s, we fully intended Murray's and the Bountifuls and Logans that we would grow into that plant. And it never came to fruition. We totally expected to be using IPA energy for the past 2 decades up to this point, but either loads dropped off or other loads came up, resources, and we've never used the plant like LA wanted us to. And the California entities, they expected us to be more of a partnership than we have been. But they have operated the plant as they wished, and they've paid for the mortgage. We paid $0 unless we called power back. And that's the beauty of the contract we have is come 2025, we would have been given the keys to the car, and that would have been our power plant, but there's no market for coal power. It's too big of a plant for Utah to take on. And so we had to work with California on another option, and that's the option we talked about with hydrogen.
Yeah, the green hydrogen is so interesting.
Yeah.
I loved hearing about that.
That green hydrogen versus regular hydrogen. Yeah.
Yeah, we're really interested.
So what I'm understanding even with that, and I guess I could have asked there, or I didn't, was even with the green hydrogen, it would use less of the plant, wouldn't it? And it would use less water.
Yes.
There'd be less resources they would have to use to be able to produce the same output of power. So we can transition it to be used more in the
Yes.
state if we really wanted to.
And not only
We have capacity, I guess.
And the value to Delta right now is maybe not so much the generation side, but of all the solar and the wind and that geothermal that's being done down there, that's more of an energy hub now. And because of the transmission systems that have been built into that area, we're going to be able to transport and transmit power throughout the Western grid, well above beyond what we can generate. It's 840 megawatts will be the new plant. 1,800 is the coal. So we're reducing that by 1,000 megawatts. When we go to the hydrogen. It's going to be interesting to see. So 30% hydrogen, 70% natural gas starting in 2025, and that'll escalate up to 100% hydrogen in the it depends who you talk to, but 2045 range. That technology is not here yet. The 100% hydrogen on that big scale is not here yet, but we will at least get the 30% hydrogen, 70% natural gas. That is a technology, but they haven't quite got
But
100% yet.
they're going to increase it, right? I mean,
Incrementally.
that's
Mhm.
right.
Hopefully technology will catch up to,
Yes.
even if it
I
doesn't,
really-
that's better than
Yeah.
what it was.
I think it will. I hope they appreciate it in that area.
Well,
That
yeah.
the impact, the environment.
And you saw the impact of jobs, 500 jobs and 1,000 people here, 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
The plant will still have 122 full-time employees. Right now, there's like 300. So there will be 200, maybe 180 people that will lose their jobs when they go from coal to the other plant. But we've already made arrangements or are making arrangements to have them educated with other jobs.
Sure.
And there'll be other jobs that will pop up around that area with the salt caverns and other technologies. So
Yeah, they could be quite a hub. I just
Yeah.
think it's such a,
you, s-
a
you see
positive
the
thing
vision.
for that area. I hope they understand that.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
it's better-
that's something that I appreciate over the last 4 years while this has been taking place. The detail that IPP has gone to make sure that the men and women that are going to be displaced by that are either retiring with bonuses or there's training going on. Very seldom do you see that type of details to the employees because it's just okay, it's gone.
Yeah, your
Best
job,
of
yeah.
luck, and that hasn't happened here.
The IPA or LA actually has been caring. I think is the word. They've
Yeah.
cared about their employees. They've actually given financial incentives to the existing employees to stay until 2025, and it's pretty good financial incentive to stay. They can't promise jobs after that point, but at least they've given the heads up to people. Stick around. We don't want you to quit yet because we'll have a skeleton crew out there if everybody
Yeah.
starts quitting. So, and the education process too. So thanks for mentioning that.
Well, and the other thing I know, and you mentioned it a couple of times, there's labor issues with the coal, and there's no labor issues with the coal. You hit it. Nothing is 100% sure, but there's been no labor strikes for 50 years in the coal mines.
Yeah.
You hit it 100%. That coal's going to China. It's not going to where it's been sold. But they try to point fingers everywhere. I just want to point it right back at them.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hey.
Thank you.
Do you want to mention COVID? COVID's to blame for everything, right?
COVID doesn't affect that engine that turns right instead of left.
But the train engineer might have COVID. Okay, let's talk about the hydro. As you know, our water season's over. October 15th, we ended our commitment to give water to Salt Lake Metro. We're in the process of getting down in the penstock, which is the big 48-inch pipe, and seeing what's happening in there. We usually do that inspection after every water year. There's no water in the pipes right now. We're also investigating some cracks in the hydro building turbine concrete foundation that we've noticed. We don't know what's causing that. It's a 30-year-old hydro. We expect a report from Bowen and Collins, which is an engineer staff here, in the next week. And we'll see what they say about fix or replace or whatever the case may be. Right now, Salt Lake Metro they like it when we capture the water up in the canyon. We bring it down through our hydro on a 2.5-mile pipe, and then it goes right from our plant into the Salt Lake Metro hydro facility, which is huge. It's a big plant that treats the water for, and when we stop giving them water, they have to siphon it out of the creek. And it's a little bit dirtier and not dustier, but dirtier and sandier. So they don't like to see the water here come to a close because we give them cleaner water than. That's just a side note that we have some partnerships with Salt Lake Metro. Let's talk about the Red Mesa. Red Mesa is the big solar plant that they're building down in the Navajo area. We had a groundbreaking. We were supposed to have a groundbreaking last month, and because of potential protests or issues on the Navajo Nation, we did not have the groundbreaking, but construction has begun. There's building the solar panels. We have a 5-megawatt interest in that, and what was going to be a spring 2022 is now a fall 2022 completion date. We won't get it for the summer like we wanted it, but come next fall, we'll have 5 megawatts of solar that is no good to us at midnight. I had to put that in there. Okay, let's talk about 2 more things and then I'll get out. I mentioned the San Juan Power Plant is a coal plant that we have a little bit of ownership in down in the Four Corners area by the Farmington, New Mexico city. The San Juan Power Plant has been slated to be demolished or mothballed spring of 2022. And a lot of it is because they had some California ownership in that plant. And as you know, like the IPP plant, California can no longer bring coal-fired generation across state lines into California. So not only have people in California ditched the Navajo generation plant, they've ditched the San Juan power plant too. And so it's a big plant that the existing non-California entities can't can't keep it going. It's not big and Murray itself can't keep the plant going, nor can some other of the UAMPS members. So the thought was that they were going to demolish it. Well, there's a firm called Enchant that has come on the scene, and this is a firm that is potentially going to buy the coal plant and continue the process of the coal plant, but capture the CO and the pollutants coming out of the pipe, and they're going to sequester that somehow in the ground, or they'll get rid of the pollutants. And they claim that they can do that, and they want to have us continue to be a member or a partner in that group. Right now, the technology is there, but they're not sure the economics are there. Right now, they're in the $30 range for that energy. And if it's a $30 resource, we'll nab it. We'll grab it. We have a little bit of interest. This is through the UAMPS group. We have a 3 megawatt interest, and we will have opportunity to buy more, but it was about $2,500 commitment to get involved with the study. And it's not a lot of money for something like that, but that is ongoing. It's we'll know probably by the end of January whether this Enchant group is able to do that. It's a technology that sounds pretty neat. They can clean up a coal plant and reproduce power back to you at $30 because basically the debt's paid off on the plant. It's basically just the cost of the coal, cost to sequester or put the pollutants in the ground or wherever they do with it, and then sell the power back in the transmission system. So it's kind of exciting for us. We're looking at ways to go out there and do other things.
4 minutes.
Good. I'm on my last note. Salt Lake County landfill. As I mentioned, we have 2 landfills that have methane options. One's at the Transjordan out by the copper mine. The other one's on 21st South, way west. The Salt Lake County landfill, we've had an agreement with them for about 13, 14 years. And we just entered into a new 9.5-year agreement a couple years ago. And they have changed their ownership. This is with a firm back in Michigan who owns the plant and sells us the power. We don't own the plant. We just buy the power from it, which is pretty sweet, I think. I don't have to send mechanics down there and figure out what to do. So we have had that for about 12 or 13 years. They came back to us a couple of weeks ago, and they met with Greg Ballon and myself, and they have determined they have enough gas that they're collecting, the methane gas off of the rotting refuse, that they can put another generator in and go for another couple decades. And they were asking about our interest in that. Right now, we have 3 megawatts of interest, and they thought they could put another megawatt in there. We have the right of first refusal. We can do that. I'll admit to you, this is the most expensive resource we have. It's in the $65, $70 a megawatt hour range versus the numbers I've talked to you about are in the 30 to 40 range. IPP callback will be in the $70 range. So it's a comparable resource to IPP callback. So we're looking at that. Now, the part of the problem is that they can't, people in the Midwest can't get a commitment out of Salt Lake County landfill because they buy the gas. The landfill collects the gas, sells it to these people, they make power with it. They can only go out 9.5 years on a contract, Salt Lake County can, to this group. And I don't know why there's that stipulation. But for these people to put millions of dollars into that commitment, they want more than a 9.5-year gas contract. So they've gone back to the Salt Lake County landfill and said, you give us a 20-year contract for gas, we'll build it. And then we would take them up on that. So rather than going 9.5 years, 9.5 years, they want a bigger one before they put the money into it. So anyway, that's an option out there we're looking at. We'll pick that up. It's a great public relations deal. It's good for the environment, and we'll pick that up if we can. We won't know that for a while. It's kind of out of our hands. But anyway, exciting things happening for power. We're hanging in there. We're hanging in there.
One last question. We're not, just because I know we kind of started off on this is where we're at with power. There's no concern for citizens to have of an increase, or
No.
If there was, you would come back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I saw the headlines and in the newspaper, and I was, the article was well written and it was correct, but I think it was a knee-jerk reaction that because our crisp rates are going up, everybody's rates are going to go up. That's not the case at all.
And we are pretty good with our portfolio to keep that.
Yeah. And I kind of explained some of the way we're doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Costs are going up, there's no doubt. We have a pretty healthy margins, which will help us avoid any rate increase. We're okay.
Thank you, Blaine.
Okay.
Thanks, Blaine. That was great.
Right on time. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the extra time this month or this
Well,
quarter.
That's okay. Now we're on our third and last discussion item, which is discussion on council and school board boundary adjustments. Brooke Smith, welcome. And Brooke is our recorder.
Broadcasting. Maybe Danny will get the TV on, but just for introductions, I have here. Sorry, let me use this. Just for introductions, my name is Brooke Smith. I'm the city recorder, and then we have Scott Burrell. He's our GIS supervisor. He's new to Murray, so we're so thankful that he's here.
Welcome.
And it has been a great support as we have tried to make these recommendations for you today. He will be taking a couple notes if we have any comments from the council, and then also could probably run some quick numbers if there was any specific questions we can do. But just a matter of housekeeping, we have posted our recommendations on our city website. For transparency reasons, we want to make sure the public was aware of our changes. If anyone is interested, they can go to murray.utah.gov and click on the search engine and search redistricting, or click on the What's Happening app, and it will all be right there. So we're excited that that was able to be published to our citizens. As a background for redistricting, the lines are redrawn every 10 years following the completion of the U.S. Census. Federal, state, and city codes stipulate that the districts have to be substantially equal in population. So as people move in and out of Murray, and as of projects are completed, the districts do change in population. So the goal here is to get that equal population for Murray City. Murray City is divided into 5 council districts, and there's 1 council member for each elected district. And then redistricting is done using the U.S. Census data, which is usually released around March 2022 or 21. However, this year it was delayed because of COVID, so it wasn't released till September. And those dates are important later on, and I'll get into more details on why there's a crunch and deadline. Utah Code Annotated requires that City Council make the adjustments within 6 months. And from or after the legislation completes its redistricting process. And this year it was done in November. So last month, Governor Cox signed the state legislative districts for both chambers into law. However, because COVID delayed the census being released, and there's upcoming school board election for 2022, there's 3 school board members that will be up for re-election or election. Their deadline to file is in March. And the county has to do a redistricting after we do a redistricting. So our final deadline to get this approved is in January, in our first council meeting that month or that year. So January 4th is when we need to get this signed, sealed, and delivered to the county so they can do theirs. And then the school board can make their adjustments and have elections run there. So there is a crunch and deadline, but I think we'll be able to make it. So just a matter of timeline. As for growth in Murray, I thought this was an interesting statistic. We actually found on the Kim C. Gardner Policy Institute published First Insight to this census, and they provided the growth rates across Utah. So it was interesting to see, and as a matter of information, it's not necessarily dealing with redistricting, but a matter of growth. The average population for Utah is 18.1%, and the estimated average for Utah or for Murray is 8.3%. And over time, council districts and school board boundaries become unequal. The redistricting is required to ensure that the equal number of constituents live in each district over the next 10 years. So you can see here the total population for Murray from 2010 to 2020 changed 8.3%. And then the total housing units changed to about 12.9% over the last 10 years. I thought that was an interesting statistic that you guys might want to know just as concepts of Murray growth. For city code, what our city code says about redistricting is that the council is divided into 5 council districts of substantially equal populations, and 1 council member from each district is elected. And then we do have that 6-month gap, but because of the shortened time frame, we've got a little bit less time. The factors we considered when we were doing the redistricting is to create that equal distribution of population. We had to use the U.S. Census data from 2020. The districts must be continuous and reasonably compact. The districts must follow natural boundaries such as rivers and streets. And the districts must be drawn to create 5 districts for the city and 5 districts for the school boards. Because we have that equally distributed population, we do have a 4% variance allowed. That creates a little gap of a range that we can fit in. So the city's population for Murray was 50,637 people. For our equal distribution, our goal or target range is 10,127 per district. And then our 4% variance is 405, both up and below that target population range, which is 9,722 to 10,532. So with each district, I do have 3 maps that I'll show you. The first map, and I'll go back and forth if you have questions, but for the first map I'm going to show you is your current boundaries and borders as it's laid out right now. So for the northwest corner, Council District 1 is all the northwest corner. Our proposed changes are in green. So Councilmember Martinez would actually pick up a couple areas to make sure that those boundaries and borders are more evenly divided. They're the natural borders and natural lines. You can see one of them is a little jetted out. I think I've got a mouse too. Hold on. Maybe I do. There it is. Hold on. Let me change my mouse figure really quick. Inner option. We'll do laser. So you see right here, she's gained that little area to make sure that the line's straight, and then this gap to cover because we needed a couple more people in her district when we removed the areas to the north and then also the bottom section to the south. So this, and the third map is going to be the cleaned up version, just showing what it would look like if it was approved by the council and moving forward. The next slide shows the population. Yeah.
Go back to that real quick
Sure.
and just tell me, so the Winchester part down there is Kat's district area right now.
Right now.
But that's the proposed. Okay.
Yeah. So the
Wanna make
proposed,
sure.
we would remove that and it would go to a
Okay.
different council, and the same with the upper portion as
Gotcha.
well.
Right.
So that's what she loses, but she also gains this area in
Right.
green and then this area in green right here.
Thank you.
Good question. Okay, so then the next slide, I show the total population, and up in the upper right-hand corner, we see here the total population for the city, number of districts, the equal distribution number. So we have our target goal of 10,127, and then our range for the maximum variance is right here. So what we did with the population is remove it, and Council District 1 had the most population growth for the entire city. So we had to reduce hers and then have everyone else gain. But we show where it is within the range that's allowed for the equal distribution and where she falls within that range. And then at the very bottom corner, you can see the difference of negative 2,533 people. Any questions with the first district? Okay, we'll keep going. Council District 2 is Del Cox's area right now. It will go to Pam Cotter when she is put into office. But right now, this is the current view of their council. Our proposed suggestion is to have that bottom portion of Council District 1 go into their district. And then because of the population totals, we had to remove some areas as well. So we removed the section to the east of that area. So when if it is approved, it would look like this at the tail end. Again, with the population totals, we get into the range, they would actually gain about a little over 1,000 people, and they're really close to that target goal of equal distribution here within our range as well.
Will you go back to that for me? Thank
Yeah.
you. So I'm just looking real quick.
I'll go back to the previous one.
District 2 goes up to what east then is that there?
Maybe Scott.
The east. So right to state.
This is state, yeah.
Look at Dale. He's nodding his head, yeah. It's going to become mine, isn't it?
Okay.
Thank you, Brooke.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. So here's our northeast and central area for District 3. We wanted to try to clean up some of the areas because they had the little peninsula. There's a couple jutted out. So what our recommended changes are here in blue, where we have cleaned up this area. So now this all would belong to Council District 3. She would have to gain a couple more people for the population totals because this was actually put into Council District 1 for CAT. And then right here, this was also put into Council District 1 to clean up that boundary. And then right here, we've also took a little bit of people out right there so we could contain that continuous and concise district area. But when it's cleaned up, it does look a little bit more boxy, if that's a word. But from the previous current view to what we propose, it's just a cleaned up version of that council district, and it stays within that northeast and central area. Council district where there's, with all of those changes, there would be a gain of 107 people, and we're really close to that target goal of equal distribution and within that range as well. For Council District 4, again, we wanted to clean up that little peninsula area and try to make it concise. So what we did here is we swapped one for the other. So this would actually go to the Council District 3, and then to gain that population totals, this had to go to Council District 4, this area to the east, right? East. Yeah. So when we clean that up, it would look like this in the future. And then for your total population, we actually hit your target goal of equal distribution right on the money. So we don't want to move yours at all. You gain 430 people, but we've got that down pretty tight right there with those two changes. And then with Council District 5, because Brett will be moving to, or Mr. Hales will be moving to mayor, that area will be up for not election, but for applications for his district. So we want to make sure his boundaries didn't change significantly and he didn't lose any current boundaries. So anyone that would be interested in running could still run. So our recommended changes or recommended change would be to gain part of District 2, but everything else would stay the same. And this gets you in the target population range. So you're at the end of if it's approved, it would look like this. And within the target range, we're about 20 people away from our target goal. You would gain 736 people, and we're in with that target goal. Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah. So here is the current district boundaries right now as they stand. This is what it would look like if the recommended changes do get passed through. And that is what we are proposing to you tonight. Does anyone have any questions or concerns or want me to go back to a slide or two or explain some more details?
Any questions?
I just want to say, I think they look like they make sense. The boundaries
Yes.
look really nice. Before, it did definitely feel strange looking at a few of trying to explain to people like, well, your neighbor's here and you're here. But I knew I was going to lose a lot of people with it being the most populated. But it kind of surprised me in seeing it. I'm like, but that's Courtney's house, but that's Sarah's house. Those are all my people. But it looks great. And I think you guys did an awesome job.
Thank you. Scott's team has worked and like tirelessly trying to get this put together for you guys. So we appreciate all their support.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It makes the districts look a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
And they make more sense. They're all, as you see, there are no peninsulas. Everything looks good. You've done a great job.
Agreed.
I agree.
Hold on. My only concern is the portion north of 4800 South, and just to kind of see if there's maybe another map that we can look into that. That neighborhood is also a part of like the downtown area and is very much affected with everything going downtown. And so, yeah. So right
This is
there where
right
she's
here.
highlighting,
Oh yeah, sure.
oh yeah.
Then I can be able to say thank you.
I mean, I love that Atwood is now more within Encompass my district, but that's all the same neighborhood and the same concerns. So that's my only concern about that. Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, we could potentially look at making a change. However, it may change every district.
And that would be great to see what it could,
Probably
you know
would.
what I mean? Just to see the variance
Uh-huh.
of that change a little bit, whether it's, cause that's, I'm not, I don't know how citizens specifically in that area are going to feel.
Yeah.
Because we barely got this packet on
Right.
an understanding on Friday. So I know this is pretty fast.
Yeah.
And that's the only part, because it's still a part of the conversations to be had.
Yeah. And just a quick thought off the top of my head, but it might be beneficial to have that area split up in two, because you're making decisions for both sides of the
Right. Yeah.
the side as well. So they could potentially have two council members to talk to, but we can certainly have Scott crunch some numbers. What would you recommend us doing moving forward? Do you want us to crunch some numbers, get them to Jennifer? Do you want to create a committee? How do you want us to move forward, since we have that shortened time frame?
I would like to see a committee if possible. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to change it drastically for everybody. I think overall, like, especially, down 5400 South, that looks great because that encompasses that whole area. It just kind of, I guess there's a lot. That's just the only thing. It's like right across the street for me too. So, which is fine. I just want to see what other options there are, if there's any.
Would you prefer us maybe when we come back to council next week to have two different options? And then you guys could vote on, do you think that's enough time to
I think
vote
we could
on two
even
different changes?
do it off site. I mean, if we work it out and then maybe finalize it that way. I don't know how that would work.
Or
I don't know. It's a new process. We were voting on it on January 4th, right?
Right. I think we're required to vote. by
Yeah.
then.
So even if we see something in the interim,
Okay.
inching or something, I don't know. I want to say yes. This looks great. But I also, if there's another option, that would be great to see too.
Okay. Does anybody else have any changes that they want to see?
No,
I don't.
I don't.
I would just speak to the issue of having people with similar issues in different districts. Previously, I had both manufactured homes communities in my district, and I don't have either now. Now they're in two different districts, and I think that's okay. I think that's actually nice, because before it was like, I'm the only person who really wants, like, there's not a ton we can do for some of the specific issues that they were looking at, but I think more voices with the same issues has benefits. So just like another piece of that.
Okay. Okay. So help me understand what direction you guys want me to take moving forward.
I'm not sure. What do you want? What is?
I would like to just see another option. That's it.
Okay. And
It may be that this is that option.
okay.
So go to what we have now, this here, and then another option that you're talking
Mhm.
about.
And do that in the interim, and then you can let us know what 20% during
Right.
city council.
It may be just this option.
To be clear, what we're talking about, as I understand this, is there'll be an option drawn up. There won't be discussion among you outside of the next meeting, but you'll be able to see it, and you'll be able to come the next meeting and talk about that option. Is that fair to say?
Does that work, Crisalba?
That is correct. Thank you.
So we would have two maps and then make a motion on
And
one of
vote for
them.
one.
Is that
Okay. We can make that work. Okay.
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 All right. Are we clear?
Yes.
But
Does that
everything
make
you've
sense?
done, it looks amazing. Can I just tell you, thank you guys for your hard work. It's
Yeah.
not, thank you so much.
It's surprisingly how even in these little boxes, there's hundreds of people that live there that could be affected, but we will certainly try to come up with a solution that works for everyone. And hopefully we can move forward with a good direction for the next 10 years. with that, I've got our Murray Board of Education precinct that we're going to review. And just a couple backgrounds. We did speak with Jennifer Covington, who is the Murray School District Superintendent, and Richard Reese, who's the Murray City School Business Administrator, and I believe he's here today, correct? So thank you, Richard, for coming. If you have any questions for the school changes we've made, feel free to reach out to me or Richard. And I believe they have sent this to their council as well, or their board. And we haven't heard anything back from them at this point about the recommended changes. So that's where we are at.
So they did get that. They did get this.
Yeah.
Thank
Again,
you.
they got it at short distance or a short time frame ago, but they have had an opportunity to view it over the past couple of days. So with that, I set it up very similar to how the council, and one of our other primary goals here is we wanted to have these precincts follow our districts as much as possible. You can see right here that this area of Murray is not in the school district. So there isn't absolute like line corrections, but we did try to mimic our city districts as much as possible, if that makes sense. So again, Precinct 1 had the most population growth over the last 10 years in the northwest corner. This is our recommended changes. Glo would lose a large portion of her district on the central side in the center, but we would keep a majority of her district right here. We did have to do this little jetty right here because Glo lives in this area. We didn't want to inadvertently kick her out. So that's why that is there. And that was our best solution with that changes. We went through several different ideas, but this one is the most succinct and moving forward. So once if it is approved, it would look like this. And then with the population total changes with the school board versus city, their total population is 38,340. So that makes the equal distribution of goal of 7,668. And our target range with a 4% variance is within the 7,000s range. But this gets us from a population of 10,000 down to almost 8,000 with a difference of about 2,600 people in her district. Still a little bit on the high end, but we couldn't lose too much more because they have a shorter or smaller variance that we could work with. Precinct 2, again, is the area shown on the screen. She would only collect a little portion of the district right here for the southwest corner, just making it a little bit more straight, following the lines of the streets. And this would what the recommendation would look like if it was approved. Again, she was a little bit below the population total, so we bumped her up with that 500 people in that area that we added to her district, which gets us to within our range. Precinct 3 is a little bit boxy. For some reason, Precinct 3 is always a little bit jetty, so we wanted to clean that up a little bit. This is our proposed changes. She would gain a large portion of district or Precinct 1, and then to keep that population total, we would have to lose that area and go to a different district right there. And this is what it would look like if approved. And it gets us within our target range and with a difference of 530 people added to her district. Precinct 4 looks like this currently. We're going to add on the bottom portion or the tail of the city in the south. And that's what it would look like at the tail end. And that gets us within the range. I will say the District 4 or Precinct 4 and Precinct 5 are on the lower population totals for both of their precincts. However, both Precinct 4 and Precinct 5 will probably have the most difference in gain in population over the next 10 years with some of the projects that are coming down the pipeline. So we're not too concerned that they're on the lower end right now, because that will adjust and probably be better moving forward with the next census that we do. And then Area 5 with Jaron Cooper, to clean this up and make it a little bit more boxy again, we would lose this bottom portion and he would gain a little bit to the north right here, creating a better looking map a little bit right there. And then again, he is on the border of being within the range, but we are still within the law. So we're excited about that. He would gain 602 people with this. And then again, his population or his area will just continue to grow, over the next 10 years. So this is what the precinct looks like right now. And then with our recommended changes, it would look like this. Does anyone have any questions about the school district?
No questions?
It looks good.
So everyone was okay with that? Richard? Okay.
That's awesome. Thanks,
Great.
Richard.
Thank you.
And the school district's been great to work with, and they've offered some advice and some suggestions, which was really valuable to us. So moving forward to create this map for you to consider.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your effort. And
Yes. Yeah,
All right,
Scott
we
did a
really-
great job. We appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been long in coming. I mean, it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah.
You know, not because of you guys, but because of all the other stuff. So anyway, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, that was it. So we are, announcements. No announcements? Okay, now we are adjourned. Thank you.